You're welcome to Business Daily on Trust TV. My name is Chamun Dabeng. Let's talk numbers. Let's start off with the market this morning. You're welcome back, and once again, my name is Chamun Dabeng. Now, 2021 was quite a struggle for many economies as countries struggled to recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course, Nigeria was not exempted from the struggle. Now, with uncertainties plaguing different sectors of Nigeria's economy, what lies ahead for the country's economy? Joining me in the studio today is political economist and development researcher Adefolarin Olamilekan. You're welcome to the show.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Great to have you here. Happy New Year to you too. Now, taking a look at basically everything that has happened in the past and, coming up to today. I mean, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, Nigeria already had some sort of economic instability.
Exactly.
Now, because we had issues of insecurity, we had issues with corruption and so much more. And this happened all before the pandemic. And of course, our situation was just worsened by COVID-19. Now, with the same issues that we have been dealing with in the past, do you really see Nigeria's economy growing, especially with the World Bank 2022 economic growth forecast for Nigeria, which actually says that the economy will grow by 2.7 to 2.8% respectively?
And in that regard, we need to understand that even before COVID-19 came, there was challenges of economic issues in Nigeria, insecurity and the rest, as I've already highlighted. But going forward in 2022, we need to look inward. And I think one of the things that the government have done in the last 6 months is to develop a medium-term national development plan, 2021 to 2025, which is to guide them on how to accelerate Nigeria's economy to the best input they can get. So in looking at that and looking at what the World Bank have said, 2.7 to 2.8 economic growth, well, in that particular plan of the federal government, it's about 4% growth they're expecting this year. And with other wonderful, laudable output they are able to arrange in that document that will exceed Nigeria out of most of the economic issues that we have today. But in doing that, they also outline what needs to be done in that regard. But critically, the challenge that we normally have with the economy is the dependence of this economy on other economies, especially in import areas, which has affected us. So the government has looked at one of the things they wanted to do was to diversify the economy. But the diversified education is not going the way it is expected, being that we don't have the technology to support it. So for me, 2.7, 2.8 of the IMF projection and the federal government looking at 4 point growth.
CBN too also
has its own point, almost like 6 points. So it's going to be dicey in a sense that the economy is still dependent and the diversification of the economy on one hand is also having issues because diversification is aimed practically and majorly on agriculture. And the government cannot force everybody to become a farmer in that regard. So it has to do with what the government have to look at. How can we enhance our enabling capacity? And which has to do with technology. Because most of the developing countries of the world depend on the technology that accelerates the economy. So in Nigerian case, the linking point as of today is our non-allowing our technology to be fusion with our economy. So unless we tie our technology to our economy, that's what we can have headway.
But even with the issues of tech, as I said earlier on, there's still the issue of corruption, there's still the issue of insecurity, which is still very much a present issue. It hasn't really gone away. So where does the government move forward from there? I mean, even if you decide to develop the technology and then you end up with vandals coming in to destroy what has already been built, because we've seen this happen where
Exactly.
infrastructure that has already been put in place is destroyed by criminals out of some sort of crisis, or to prove a particular point to the government, or whatever their reason may be. But this does happen, which is still taking the country back to where it's struggling to come
very
out
good.
from.
You have made it very valuable. But the thing is that one thing technology will also help us to do is to limit insecurity challenges, because we're not just developing technology that will help the economy alone, but also enhance security atmosphere in the country. So for me, looking at how we can link up our technology to our economy is the way forward to go. And then the issue of insecurity, globally there's insecurity. It's not just peculiar to Nigeria alone, but with the one we have in Nigeria, it's about banditry, terrorism, ritual killing, armed robbery, and the rest of them. But we know with technology it can enhance our security personnel to arrest and determine where and prevent even security issues in the country. So that's one of the good ways. Then another issue we can also look at is how we can, you talk about corruption. Beyond the structural challenge that we have in Nigeria that have affected our economy, we also need change of mindset. The people that we have in government, the people that we have working for the government, what kind of mindset do they have? Do they have the mindset to love their country, to determine that they are going to do the better way for the country, so that everybody can enjoy the wealth of the country? Or do they have that mindset of just self-preservation, self-accumulation of wealth? Is that what they have? So apart from technology infusion into the economy, the mindset of the people have to change. And this goes with orientation of every Nigerian, not just the political class alone, including those of us that are not even in the political position. We need to have a new orientation about how to love Nigeria and make Nigeria work for every one of us.
It just goes beyond, let me step in and have my own share of the national cake.
That's not what we are.
It's more of what can I contribute
Exactly,
to the Nigerian safety,
project.
the economy, its growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in that regards also, we need to look at how we can ameliorate all these aspects of individual contribution to the economy, because as it is, the informal sector have been left behind so much over the years, not just now, over the years that have been left out. So the government have to look at what they can do to bring in the informal sector. Although CBN have done a lot through their interventional program for the informal sector, but beyond throwing money at informal sector, how can we harmonize all the good things that we can get for the informal sector in terms of their production, in terms of what they are producing? Because if you look at what the IMF and other government projections have been talking about, it's about the GDP. So how do we harmonize our GDP, not looking at just the formal sector GDP contribution? What about the informal sector GDP contribution? Because all these help us to not just to grow the economy, but also to stabilize it beyond what I've just pointed out, the 2021-2025 National Development Plan, Medium Plan project. Beyond it, because what we'll be looking at is beyond 2025 and beyond 2022 as it is. So the projection will go far, and to do that is to bring both the formal sector and informal together. Whatever GDP we can get from both sides, let us see how we can harmonize it.
All right, so this document that you were talking about, the 2020-2025 development plan. Now, could you give us a better understanding as to what it actually is and what it means for the country's economy? I
think majorly, the major objective of that plan is how to accelerate Nigerian economy beyond 2025. But it has subsector and sector. We have about 18 areas that they are focusing on. One of them is electricity, one of them is security, one of them is monetary policy and fiscal policy. One of them is how to bring people out of poverty. I think they estimated about 36 million to bring out of poverty. They also estimated about 20 million new jobs to be created. But all this is tied to one thing that the government, which I was so proud of the document, is about 195-page document. But one thing I was so proud was, as I mentioned in our discussion earlier, was that how to fusion our technology to our economy. So one of the things the government identified was that they have been spending so much in terms of gas exploration and crude oil exploration. So they are now looking at how they can fusion local technology to be able to exploit gas and crude oil. So which I also commend them for. So but in going forward, how this will be done beyond the paperwork is what we are looking at. How they can bring all this theoretical work into practical existence is the issue. So one of the other issues that we can also find out from the document was that the document looked at how to grow the Nigerian electricity beyond the struggling 7,500 megawatts that we've been struggling with to about 25,000 megawatts by 2025. But how to get that one done, which I also I want to encourage the government, is that they also look at local technology in that respect. We have over 60 research institutions. We have NASANI. NASANI is one of the biggest engineering infrastructure institutions in Nigeria. How can NASANI come into the to this. I'm saying this because I know Nasani has a particular agency in Karachi in Abuja that produce solar energy. And one of the issues that the document also tried to do is that they want to see how they can improve our wind solar energy beyond maybe 10,000, 20,000 so that they can support the thermoelectrical power sector also. So we can look at that. Government can look at how Nasani can come into this so that we can have a broader way of increasing electricity and also making sure that our manufacturing sector have enough power to use so that they can produce more. Because the issue is this. Because one of this I also find out from that document is that the government want to reduce dependence of our importation because we have import a lot. So they want to see how they can bring about so our manufacturing sector can also work effectively. So one of the things that the major manufacturing sector that we complain about is that lack of power. So with this increasement of 25,000 mega power that we are looking at, it can help them to accelerate their production and so keep them in business for a longer time instead of traveling to other countries.
All right, so let's take a look at the share of people that have partly been vaccinated against COVID-19. Now, it's very difficult to take this away because it's still something that a lot of countries are still struggling with. Now, so far, there have been about 4 different waves of the pandemic and many variants. I mean, we're talking Alpha, we're talking Delta, we're talking Omicron, which is the most recent one. And we saw what it did to the aviation sector with countries closing up their borders. We saw what it did to oil prices and the scare that it gave so many different economies and, you know, governments out there. Now, obviously, the Nigerian government, oh, by the way, there's a new one, Demicron, that we're looking at. So there are just a whole lot of different variants coming out every single time. Now, obviously, the Nigerian government was not prepared for the pandemic. So, you know, we were not the only country that was unprepared for this. Countries all over the world did not expect such a pandemic to hit. Now, how would you say the government has done in terms of managing and, you know, making contingency plans so that something like this does not reoccur and end up having that sort of dire effect that it had on the economy, where we literally had to have 2 different lockdowns, and we know what that actually did to, you know, the reality of so many people's lives because people lost their jobs.
And in that regard, we need to also understand there's economic issues around this COVID-19 issue, which are normally tagged economic of COVID-19, in the sense that it has limited, especially informal sector in Africa. Informal sector in Africa have suffered a lot from this lockdown that we have experienced. But the Nigerian government, I will give it to them, they have tried. Even recently, there has been this campaign all over the country. Even in Abuja, you can see where you can go and do your vaccination and the rest of it. But the issue still remains that in future, even now, how much preparation can we do to safeguard the economy? Because the economy is a key thing. Locking down will not be the result, will not give us what we want. But how can we make sure that the economy is protected beyond just what has happened? And
the lockdown was to prevent the spread. So.
Very good, to prevent the spread. But at the same time, we remember that the economy was not doing actually so well because there was 2 recessions before the lockdown came in. So for me, I would advise that the government should do everything necessary so that in future we won't have such happening. And for them to do what they need to do is to help our manufacturing sector, because the manufacturing sector will sustain the economy, because the informal sector with the manufacturing sector, which is the official sector, can help us to harmonize all the gains of production. Because what is happening to the Nigerian economy, we are not producing much. Because we are not producing much, we now depend on another country. So when there's issues of pandemic globally, all countries that are not producing much, that depend on other countries for their goods and services, will definitely suffer for it. So Nigerian government should see how they can accelerate production in Nigeria, increase production access in Nigeria. And in this regard, government should not leave business for business and individuals alone or business corporation. It is now time for them to now see how they can also engage in businesses. And if you understand what I mean, engaging in business means that all government-owned enterprise must not see it as a free lunch, wasting government resources, just doing business and not be able to account for what they have been able to provide or account for the profit of their business. But it's now time for them to begin to account for what they have been able to gain over the years in serving as government-owned enterprise. In this regard, they can now compete in terms of profit-making, commercialization of their organization with other profit organizations. Although we know that their major concern is the welfare of the people. But at the same time, they also give account of what they are producing so that we can have enough revenue for the government so that we can spend on infrastructure development. And that is the best way to go.
All right, so speaking of the manufacturing sector itself, as we all know, there's electricity and fuel subsidy removal on its way to happen this very year. Now, taking a look at that, there have been a bunch of people, or so many people that have been, you know, on different sides of the divide. It's been a very controversial discussion. You know, you have people saying, yes, it needs to be done so that it can free up funds, so, you know, other sectors can actually grow and the money will go towards those areas. But looking at fuel subsidy and electricity subsidy removal, we already know that this is going to increase tariffs when it comes to electricity. We know that this is going to increase the price of fuel once it's removed. I mean, Mele Kyari came out to say, oh, its prices will go up to 320, 340 once subsidy removal is actually affected. But what happens now to the manufacturing sector? How do they now, you know, keep up with production? How do they maintain their staff? And not only in those areas, but even, you know, private sectors and also the manufacturing sectors. What now happens to them in 2022 once fuel subsidy and electricity subsidy is removed?
I think we should also understand that the government, even himself, is a little bit, you know, showing concerns for Nigeria, whether to remove it or not to remove it. You know, this election year, election preparation year, so they may be very, very careful so that they will not lose power come 2023. So that's why you see that some people are saying, okay, they are going to remove it, they're not going to remove it. But let's look at the economic angle of subsidy removal. It's going to be beneficiary, but the subsequent result after first removal in the first 6 months is what we are afraid of. So because if it comes like that, definitely it's going to affect so many informal sector businesses, and even big companies are also going to be affected. But the issue is this: what can government do? We know they are trying to give 5,000 naira to individuals. What about corporate organization? Manufacturing sector, medium-scale enterprise, what are going to do for them in that regards for the next 6 months so that they can survive? As you said, there may be a situation where they will have to lay off staff so that they can meet up with their production costs. What can the government do in that regard? We know CBN have been releasing money to them, but in this regard, targeted manufacturing sector companies, what can we do to make them so that they can survive subsidy removal from fuel and electricity? That should be what the government should be to look at from today, so that we can have a better, robust economy in 2022.
Because it's not just about you know, creating that environment for them. You want them to build up to the point where they are not only meeting the demand of Nigerians, but they are also exporting.
Exactly.
Because even when you look at it, there is a deficit where we have higher importations levels than export levels.
Exactly. So in that regards now, we know one of the targets of the government in National Development Plan is to how to see that Nigeria accelerate its exporting economy procedures, in the sense that we export more. We export to other countries than importing to our country. So in this regard now, with this subsidy removal now, it will affect them. But one thing that economists normally talk about, let us be sufficient in our production first. Let us see how we can feed the consuming in the country first before we talk of outside people. So in this regard, if they remove subsidy, how will they survive? What should the government do in the short term or in the long term? In the next 6 months, in the next 8 months, they are going to do that. What should they do to help the manufacturing sector and SMEs and informal sector businesses? That is the key thing. Because if they don't have anything to do for them, the 5,000 they are going to give to individual may not be part of it. But let us see how we can marshal out a new plan for these businesses so that they can survive. Because if they don't do that, their target of getting about 4 million new jobs will maybe eroded through the National Development Plan. Their target of getting Nigerians to understand how this economy will work for them may be eroded. And again, the particular party in power, they want to stay beyond 2023. So they should be able to manage these subsidy issues. And in my own assessment, in my own understanding, they may remove it, but that price will still be controlled. We may not get up to 340 naira per litre, because they may find a way to remove it, but they also find a way to create a palliative in terms of price control for Nigeria.
All right. So on my final question, it's definitely going to be on the type of policies that we have: monetary policies, fiscal policies. What kind of policies need to be implemented at this point in order to ensure the growth of the economy?
In my this week article for National Dailies, I suggested that there should be a fusion of monetary policy and fiscal policy together. In a sense that as we are trying to target taxes for the people to pay, we also make sure that the monetary policy also have a way to remove excess load on the people. And when I'm talking about the monetary policy, we're talking about naira to dollar. So in this regard, it's a suggestion to the Nigerian Central Bank. What can central bank do in terms of managing its marginal profit on each dollar that is selling? Nobody is asking CBN that question. How can CBN, now it is 4.35 at the official rate, and we know that CBN is making profit from that money. How can CBN control its own profit on that 4.35 so that dollar can be, when it is well managed, when CBN reduces, so definitely my black market will definitely come down. But when CBN increases its own, it affects black market. So how can CBN manage its profit that is making on each naira? That is a suggestion. Nobody is asking them, because the more they think of the profit on each naira they are selling, the more the black market increases its own profit. So how can CBN manage its own profit so that when they have not too much profit, but at least that will help Nigerians to have access to dollar, then it will be more better for them. That's how I see it. So we can bring about a fusion of the monetary and a fusion of the fiscal policy. When we manage it together, we look at what the taxes that Nigerians are paying and also look at what CBN is making on each naira. Can they break it down? Can they reduce it? Can they work on it so that Nigerians can have access to dollar?
All right. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to continue on and ask more questions, because I did have a whole list here. But yes, I think 2022 is going to be quite an exciting year for Nigeria's economy, especially if all the policies, both monetary and fiscal policies that have been created by the government actually pans out. So let's hope and see, because the country has been through so many struggles in the past few years. Like he said, 2 different recessions, even before the pandemic came in and hit the entire world. But let's see how things play out. Hopefully they'll go well. All right, so we've come to the end of our show for today, and I would like to thank my guests in the studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Adefolarin, for being a part of the show. And to all our viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to follow us on our social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Just look us up at Trust TV News. Well, once again, my name is Chamun Dabeng. Come back again for more Business Daily. Let's talk numbers.